All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Enhancing Data Security and Resilience with Catalogic DPX VPlus. My name is Arvind Kurpati. You can call me AK, and I head the channels and alliances for APAC, and I'm based in Singapore. Today, I have the privilege of hosting Martin Fan. He's our field CTO based in the US. And hopefully, you had a great day, Martin. You want to say hello?
Everyone, thanks for joining us this day for our webinar.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. All right. So, for what we had in mind today was a very quick agenda here for you, short and crisp. For those of you who are new to Catalogic, super quick introduction about who we are, what we do, and today's topic in particular is about focused on virtualization. Yeah. We will kind of summarize what we are observing on the field, what we are hearing from our customers and partners, and what sort of infrastructure transformations are happening, what sort of use cases are driving some of those. And as a result of that, what are some of the challenges as it relates to protecting your data? Yeah. Martin will then do a great demo of DPX VPlus, and then we'll finish up with Q&A. Now, during the course of the webinar, we will try to answer as many questions as possible. I believe there is a Q&A box and a question and answer box where you can ask us questions. And as and when we see questions, we'll try to answer them. Okay? But again, once again, thank you so much for taking time and joining us and choosing to spend an hour of your day with us. Yeah? So, like very quickly, for those of you who are very new to Catalogic, yeah, we've been around the block for a very long time. Yeah, we have a we are 25 plus year history in data protection. We've had a very strong OEM technology partnership with the likes of NetApp and IBM for a very long time. And today, as of today, we have three main product lines: DPX VPlus, and Cloud Casa. And together, we cover one of the most comprehensive set of operating systems, applications, hypervisors, databases, M365, and Kubernetes environments. And that could be running in the data center, cloud, or the edge. Today's topic is more focused on V+, and that covers hypervisors or virtualization platforms that can be on-premise, or it can be on the edge, it can be on the cloud. Yeah. Um, and, and this is just a sample of some of the technologies that we support. Yeah? This is by no means the comprehensive set of technologies that we can protect. And even this list, as you can see, is a very long list and something that's pretty unique in the data protection space. Yeah? Uh, Given our long history, we can do things like AIX to tape, right? Or and we, as a company, Catalogic, we also have some great set of solutions. If you have modernized your applications or containers, or you're running those container workloads on the cloud, and we have anything in between, right? Again, today's focus is on virtualization and hypervisors, particularly this particular column here. Yeah. Now, when we talk to our customers and partners like yourselves and customers like yourself in the region, there are a few things that are happening, right? And we try to capture some of those trends here in the next couple of slides. Okay. And I think everybody is familiar with these 7 R's of cloud migration. Yeah. Refactor, replatform, repurchase, rehost, relocate, retain, retire. Yeah. And for today's discussion, when we say cloud, we are talking about both the private cloud and the public cloud. And we are talking about this for both an enterprise as well as a service provider. Okay. We will focus in particular on rehosting and refactoring strategies. Okay? And when we talk about this, right? When we talk about the rehosting, decisions that IT leaders need to make, that's a very important decision. Okay. I would say like you can't build a skyscraper without a strong foundation. And without a strong, solid infrastructure foundation, it's very hard to run applications and any other choices that you make on top of that infrastructure. Okay? So if you again think about three broad categories of your infrastructure, your data center, your edge, and the cloud. In the data center, what we are seeing is a continued adoption of hyper-converged infrastructure, yeah? and uh, and a lot of private cloud, which is could be automation, software-defined cloud data centers that we're talking about here, and that could be for an enterprise, that could be for a service provider, and also customers are trying to make sure that those infrastructures are container ready so that they are future proof in some sort. Okay? And on the edge, a lot of it is driven by how do you bring the data and the data decisions to the edge. And a lot of these are AI-led transformations that are happening. And in some cases, it may even need to literally be ready to face all sorts of extreme weather. So it may need to be very rugged edge infrastructure as well. And of course, the cloud is always an option if you're running just infrastructure as a service, or you're trying to leverage all the cloud native technologies. Yeah? So these are some of the transformations that we see. And going back to some of the technologies that we highlighted previously, yeah, it could be something like Nutanix, where fantastic hyperconverged and container-ready platform, or it could be a container-ready platform like SUSE Harvest or OpenShift Virtualization or Mirantis, or it could be something like a cloud computing platform like OpenStack if you're a service provider, for example. Okay? On the edge, could be things like Azure Stack, could be things like scale computing, could be things like Proxmox. And on the cloud, if you're just doing a lift and shift, it could be Azure Virtual Machines, EC2, Google Cloud Compute Platform. It could be any of the above. Okay, so there's obviously not the full list, but there's just a sample of what we are seeing. But the key thing is that going back to the 7 Rs of this migration strategy, your rehosting and refactoring are pretty high on the agenda, and that drives a lot of these infrastructure decisions. Yeah. And I think everybody's aware why there is an accelerated push to look at alternatives and make some different decisions here. So we don't need to talk about that here. Yeah. But at the end of the day, as you move forward with these infrastructure choices, what you end up is in a multi-platform situation. Part of it could be in a private cloud, part of it could be in the public cloud. Um, so you result, or you could just do a multi-platform, right? Some different technologies in the edge, different technologies in the data center. And if you're a service provider or a large enterprise running a private cloud like a service provider, you need it to be as automated as self-service as possible for a multi-tenant environment. Okay. So I think at a broad level, I think these are some of the top challenges that we see to make sure that as you make those infrastructure choices, your data protection solution must be capable of adapting to these changes. Yeah. So the solution, again, that we're going to discuss, that's a great answer to these solutions is DPX VPlus. Okay? And if I were to just zoom in here for a minute, you see the super long list of virtualization platforms. This solution also supports M365. It also supports a variety of file and storage technologies such as Nutanix files and volume groups. Yeah? And it's completely agentless, as Martin will demonstrate. It also has the ability to understand your applications, enterprise databases, and other applications running on these virtual machines. And it also has a very wide variety of out-of-the-box integration so that you can choose to store these backups, especially for air gap immutability and ransomware protection use cases. And you have a very wide variety of choices on where you can store. And that includes the Catalogic DPX vStore that we discussed in the previous webinar, and that it seamlessly integrates with DPX VPlus. Yeah? So you have a tremendous amount of choice when it comes to what you can back up, how you can back up, and where you can back up. Yeah? So that's the advantage of DPX VPlus. And all these solutions, we have made sure that these are validated with the technology alliances that we are driving. Uh, this is hot off the press. We are officially Nutanix ready. This is where you can find information, solution briefs, and the Nutanix ready certification details on the Nutanix website. Similarly, we just also listed in the Oracle ISV catalog for Oracle Linux and virtualization. Yeah. So again, there's just a sample of the validation. Yeah. So, so hopefully that gave an appreciation for what are our customers facing in terms of infrastructure transformations, and what are some of the key decisions that they are taking as they modernize and continue on that cloud journey. Yeah. And hopefully, you see V plus what based on what's been presented so far as a excellent solution. And I know we haven't gotten into a lot of details, but maybe the next couple of minutes, Martin, it may be you may want to go over a high level architecture before we jump into a demo. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Arvin. So we're going to talk about the architecture for VPlus, and this software has been designed to scale up and scale out based off of its client or server slash node architecture. So over here, can you go back one slide there, Arvin? Go back one slide. Sorry. Yep. So over here, we're going to see the scalability via the multi-node architecture diagram. Over on the left-hand side, you can see the different hypervisors that we can scan into our VPlus server. And with VPlus, there are two components that you would need to concern yourself with. One is the VPlus server, which is essentially the brains of the operation. You have one VPlus server within your enterprise, but then you have this other component called a VPlus node. And the VPlus node is going to act as the gateway between the hypervisors or the sources that you're going to be backing up and submitting that data to the backup destination of your choosing, which could be anything from object storage to file to block level storage that is presented up to this VPlus node. So think of the node component as more or less a data mover that is going to allow you to perform those backups, perform restores by mounting snapshots directly from the backup destination. Next slide. Now, we also have other sources that we can protect here as well. For example, Microsoft 365 in the cloud, which includes your Exchange Online, your mailboxes, your calendars, your contacts. And in addition to that, OneDrive, SharePoint support, Teams-based support. So that is going to follow the same backup scheme in terms of having this VPlus server and VPlus node concept. And we'll go through that in our demo as well. But I just want to bring this to your attention. Now, as you start branching out to the cloud, let's say you are deploying a new hypervisor on-prem, let's say you want to move more towards managed compute services within AWS, Azure, or Google, we have support for these cloud providers within VPlus as well. So you can scan in your cloud accounts for Amazon or Azure, let's say, and define a backup for that to a vProtect node that's also going to be located within that cloud instance. So that's what you see here, where let's say you have some compute instances, perhaps defined within EC2 Amazon. What you're going to need to do is just deploy one of those instances as a VPlus node a component within the enterprise, and that's going to enable you to back up that or the VMs within that region. So next slide there, Ervin. All right, so now comes the demo, and what I'll do is I'm just going to show you around some of the VPlus screens here, how you go about configuring a backup, registering a hypervisor, and just 1 second to share out my screen here. Okay, Arvin, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can, Martin.
Okay, perfect. So right now I am opened up in a web browser here connected to my VPlus server component. So there is a web server component that I have on VPlus, my VPlus server that I can use as my portal to log into the user interface to manage backups and restores. So let me just sure I don't fat finger the password there. So this is the dashboard for my VPlus server. And this is where I'm going to scan in my hypervisors, my backup destinations, and define backup policy against the VMs that I want to back up from that hypervisor. So the very first thing I need to do is tell VPlus my source, what I want to back up. And you saw that long list of sources that we have there. So this would be under virtual environments, virtualization providers here. And you can see I have a range of different sources from Azure to Nutanix Prism Server to OpenStack to KVM. And it's pretty simple to create a new virtualization provider. Here over on the right-hand side, I can just click on this create button. I can specify the type of virtualization provider that I want VPlus to connect to. Let's say in my case, I want to connect to an OpenStack server or to a Nutanix Prism server. I can just simply specify the URL that I would use to log into my Prism Element server or Prism Central server, and that's going to allow me to connect to that hypervisor and then perform an inventory of all the virtual machine instances within that hypervisor. So long as I provide a username and password here, I can specify some other Nutanix settings for how I want the uh, VPlus node to act and behave when connecting to this virtualization provider. But you can see here that I have these different virtualization providers already added. They have some VMs configured within them. All these VMs are going to show up under the instances tab over on my left-hand side here. And I can see the instances of all the VMs that are attached to that virtualization provider that I just done inventory on. In this case, I have some dummy VMs that are located out here. I can take a look at some of the backup details, the backup history for this VM listed in my VPlus user interface. So that is how I would go about scanning in a virtualization provider. Now, we can also scan in other sources as well. As Arvid mentioned, we do support enterprise storage from, let's say, Nutanix files or volume groups. So any file system operation that we have from a storage perspective that we support or support from a storage provider's perspective, I can just go in here and just simply add that storage provider by clicking on storage providers here over on the left-hand side. I can create a new storage provider provided with the type of storage that I want my Nutanix node to connect to. And in this case, this could be file system Ceph, Nutanix files and volume groups. We just recently received our Nutanix Ready certification, so it is supported or fully integrated into that Nutanix environment. So that's just storage providers as another source that you can back up. And then finally, we have the Microsoft 365. So this is when you've moved your Microsoft 365 over to, or your Microsoft services like Exchange, like OneDrive, over to Microsoft 365. For that, I'm just going to jump into a new user interface here where I have those organizations scanned into my enterprise. Here I can just use a setup assistant to deploy the Microsoft 365 application into my Azure tenant, and that's going to allow my VPlus server access into the Microsoft 365 applications and services and once I've scanned them in and performed an inventory of those Microsoft 365 services, I can see those user mailboxes that are being backed up. I can take a look at some of the backup history details for that, just like I would in a virtual machine instance. But at the same time, I can also perform granular recovery just by simply scanning through the protected data on the destination. So I can drill down into, let's say, the inbox of a specific user, select some user mailbox and export that out to a PST file, or just simply download or restore that data from a source perspective. So those are the different types of sources that we can protect with VPlus. In our case, we're going to be focused on the virtual machine environments, right? So the open hypervisors that you would have been backing up or scanned in from a virtualization perspective. And this doesn't it's very flexible from a virtualization perspective because of the fact that it supports this wide range of hypervisors. So depending on the hypervisor compute that you choose to go with, we're going to have you covered with V Plus through this list. So that is how I would go about adding a virtualization provider. And once I add my virtualization provider, I just need to scan in and define a backup destination. So within my backup destinations here over on the left-hand side, what I can do is I can create a backup destination of varying types, as Aravind showed you within that screenshot. We can back up to a file system that is connected to the V Plus node. We can back up to a a an object storage destination connected to VPlus. So let me just jump back to the other. But what I was just showing you here was just some of the virtual machine instances. These are the VMs that have been defined into my hypervisor environment and then assign some type of backup policy where I can just simply run an ad hoc backup or restore. Before I can do that, though, I need to set up a backup destination. And this is just where I'm going to be backing up to. Now, from a destination perspective, we have varying or a divergence of different types of destinations that you can define for your backup, like file system. In this case, you can define a file system. You can use our Catalogic vStore server, which is our software-defined storage appliance, providing immutability, replication, snapshots. We use this for our DPX product, but if you just have a file system, let's say NFS or block storage out there that has an EXT or XFS file system installed on it, we can use two different types of file system backups in which you can just simply specify a, a backup path to store your snapshots in, and that backup path would obviously be accessed through the V Plus node. We also support object storage as well. So let's say you are wanting to back up to the cloud or some S3 compatible object storage, an OpenStack Swift or Microsoft Azure Blob Storage. You can do that very easily by just specifying object storage. If you're using, let's say, Nutanix or object services, Nutanix object services from Nutanix, we can back up to that destination as well. And in my case, I have some varying or different object storage destinations defined, including both object and file system storage that I can use for backup. So with that said, now that we have our source, we have our backup destinations defined, it's just a matter of defining a backup policy for these virtual machine environments. So in this case, I'll jump to my virtual machine environments. I'll create a new backup policy for those virtual machine environments, and then just simply create how, what, when, where I want to back up. So in this case, I want to define a policy, call it critical production machines backup, and then I can choose some options or priority on this backup job policy, and then just simply assign virtual environments to that backup job policy. So if I want to back up multiple VMs from my hypervisor, I can just go in and select those VMs that I want to assign to this backup policy. Or I can also choose auto assignment, which is going to allow me to group VMs based off of VM tagging, if it's supported within your hypervisor, or naming conventions, let's say using irregular expression rules to automatically bring in VMs of a certain name. Let's say it includes the string prod into my backup job. Once I have that policy created, I can assign rules for the policy where I wanted to back up to this file system or this object storage server listed here. I wanted to find a certain number of days retention for each snapshot and how I want to keep it. And of course, how often I want to schedule this backup policy. So I can go in here, I can create a schedule for my full backups, my incremental backups, and I can even create a schedule for backup synchronization. So this is, if I'm backing up to a primary, I want to synchronize that to a secondary backup destination, I can go ahead and perform or create that schedule. And the scheduling is very intuitive as well, from just simply defining a time that you want the backup job to run. If I want to run every Monday, Wednesday in the last week in the month, across all months, I can very easily create that schedule listed there. So this is how I would go about creating a backup policy for my virtual environments listed here. And then finally, just to kick off a backup is just a matter of going into my virtual machine instances and then just simply setting that policy or running that policy listed here. So I can just click on backup. It's going to ask me how I want to back this up. If I was using a file system, synthetic file system as my destination, I can choose to back up with a full once and then followed by incrementals, and then the file system on the backup destination will synthesize or rehydrate a full recovery point image so that I have a quote unquote golden copy image on my backup storage destination. So that is just a quick and dirty demonstration of VPlus there. My apologies again for the technical difficulties in the connectivity, but hopefully this gives you enough to give you some idea as to the capabilities of what we can do in terms of backup and restore.
Thank you, Martin. So I think that does highlight the long list of virtualization platforms that we can support, the 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 flexibility in choosing where you want to back up. And I think you also touched upon how we can do agentless backup, which is not just understanding the hypervisor layer, but also understanding the OS and the applications running inside those virtual machines. Yeah. Is that fair to say? Okay. You may be on mute.
Oh, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, yes.
Okay, got it, got it. And it's exactly the same mechanism for, say, OpenStack, which is a slightly different animal, and it's multi-tenanted. And if you're interested in that, we can definitely organize a deeper dive on any of these technologies. Yeah. Okay, so let me share my screen back here and go back to the PowerPoint here. Yeah. So, so I think what you just saw was a very intuitive workflow. Yeah. Essentially, it's you add in what you want to back up. We will inventory those environments, so you know which machines, which instances are there, and you simply define a backup SLA, a policy and schedule, and you define where you want to back it up to. And we didn't really go through the restore process, but the restore is as well intuitive the same way that Martin just demonstrated. Yeah. So in a sense, right? So what V Plus allows you is virtualize with confidence as you're making these infrastructure decisions because it has such an extensive hypervisor support. We talked about the nodes in the architecture previously, and that allows you to scale at enterprise levels. We do have environments that are petabyte level that are being protected using DPX VPlus. Particularly for OpenStack, it's completely self-service driven, which is again a great integration. But even otherwise, you can leverage the APIs that are available to make it self-service. Agentless is a big capability that I can't emphasize enough because a lot of the times when you're currently using on one of the technologies, you may have a bunch of agents. And when you move those things over to a new platform, having it all agentless significantly eases the migration process. Yeah. And the UI, as you saw, is modern, HTML5, it's intuitive, it's consistent workflows, no matter what technology that you're protecting. I think the other important thing also about V Plus that we didn't talk about is the licensing model. Yeah? You have the, for anything that's largely virtual machines, that kind of workload, you can choose between sockets and virtual machines. And for the file-based target, like the Nutanix files and the volume groups and those things, it is simply front-end capacity. And then you can mix and match with perpetual and subscription options. Okay? So that gives you a great amount of flexibility on finding the right model for your use case and for your customers. Okay? So Catalogic has been around for a very long time. I think you should absolutely give it a try, and you wouldn't be disappointed. The licensing model is flexible. We are proven, flexible, scalable, and also we have a great technical support team that has the follow the sun 24/7 model with very easy ways of engaging our support team to make sure that you're taken care of no matter what time you're having an issue. Yeah. So, uh, Martin, anything else that you would like to highlight for the audience today?
No, I don't see any questions though. So if you do have any questions, technical or otherwise, feel free to input them into the chat and we'll be happy to answer them for you.
Okay. Let's give it a minute or two for the audience to put in any questions that they may have. Yeah. Okay. So I'll leave this on for a couple of minutes here. If you want to scan in our contact details or fill out a form to request a demo as a follow-up, we'll be absolutely delighted to organize a one-on-one session to go over into a lot more details. Yeah. Uh, we just focused the demo today on Nutanix. Equally same capability, whether it's scale computing or Virtuoso or OpenStack or Azure Stack or Citrix hypervisor, anything KVM based. Yeah? So yeah, lots or Azure VMs, uh, EC2, Google Cloud Platform, any of that. Yeah. So equally cool capability for all of that. Okay. So we'll leave that here in a minute. If anyone wants to scan the QR code for the contact details. Okay.
And just to add on to that, Arvind, I would recommend that you do check out our YouTube channel as well, where we have some pre-recorded demos of Microsoft 365, OpenStack, and Azure VM, Citrix VM, all the different hypervisors that you had talked about as well in more detail. So if you'd like to see some pre-recorded demos listed there, feel free to check out our YouTube channel.
That's a very good point, Martin. And we do have a lot of recent content as well. So we do see those content as well. Yeah. We just came out with DPX version 7. And what we demoed was one of the latest versions there. So that adds a lot of flexibility for new things like backup destinations and other stuff. Yeah. And we will be organizing the next webinar that's focused on our purpose-built Kubernetes data protection. That's backup migration, replication, backup recovery, migration, and replication. That solution is called Cloud Casa. And it also has KubeVirt support, which means that we talked about the re-platform and the re-hosting choices. If you're choosing a container-ready platform and you want to have a single solution for both containers and virtual machines, Cloud Casa would be the solution that we'll be looking at. And you will stay tuned for the exact schedule for this webinar. It will be in the next few weeks. Yeah.